So I want to talk a little bit about crucial conversations, and what I'm going to try to do is pick up a little bit where Dave left off and give you some very specific information about this. So how we stumbled on to this training, Tanner came into my office one day after having a meeting about this building. So he'd met with our folks to solicit feedback on what we wanted this building to be, what his vision for it was, what input they had. Went and laid out this stuff, had a talk, and didn't get a lot of feedback from folks, and then circled back around and heard little bits and pieces of information of, well, so-and-so wants it to be this and so-and-so wants it to be that. But when he was asking them for that, standing in front of them, asking for that information, he wasn't getting a lot of that feedback. And he came in, and we just finished doing some training on interviewing, and he said, would you be willing to look into finding something to teach people how to have more conflict, to disagree with me, to say, no, I think this is a crazy idea. And said, you know, you do a great job of that, of coming in my office. I wasn't sure that was quite a compliment, but said, how can you get more people to be that way? And so I started doing some research and looking into it, and we stumbled onto this book, Crucial Conversations. And I'm going to give you the cliff notes of the cliff notes of the cliff notes today on this book, and hopefully leave you with something that can give you a very clear path on how to enter into a crucial conversation. So want to try and do that, and I'll define a crucial conversation. Okay? Anything with opposing opinions, strong emotions, and high stakes. So what this is going to give you is a script to deal with conflict. So Dave talks a lot about just say it, right? Just put it out there. Just tell them exactly what they're doing. But if you've never seen that behavior before, if you've never been around somebody who's done that, how do you go about doing that? Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. I want you to write this down. This is what I believe to be the best definition of a healthy organization. And this is not something I came up with. This is as stolen. Okay? The time that elapses between when someone sees something and when they say something. So think about your organizations, right? So they see something that needs addressed. When do they say something? How much time elapses between those two? How many problems occur? How many things get ignored? Do you create a culture in which it's great to bring those kind of things forward? Are you asking people to do that? When they come forward and they do that and they say, hey, I think we've really got a problem over here. You as the leader, do you go, yeah, I know. Any idiot can see that. Why don't you get back and get in your box and worry about what you need to do today? Right? Or do you say, hey, thanks for bringing that to my attention. I really appreciate that. Here's what you might not know about that, or yes, we are working on that. Okay? How do you handle those types of things to promote that speed in which people do that? So there are two main types of people inside all of your organizations. Two main types of people in how they deal with a crucial conversation, how they deal with conflict. Okay, the first one we're going to talk about is a lion, and they don't call these things in the book, but we created this as a part of our training to help people understand how people deal with conflict. So the first one is a lion. They have a crucial conversation coming. They've got some feedback they want to give somebody. They've got an argument or a fight, and they want to show up and they're going to fight you, right? They want to argue. They want to get down into the details. They want that conflict. They almost relish that conflict. Okay? Anybody know some people like that inside your organizations? They're kind of looking for a fight. They want to do that. Show of hands. Anybody? Nobody has? Okay, good. Okay? That one's not quite as common, at least not inside our organization, as the next one here. The gazelle. Okay? These people want to avoid conflict. They're going to run. Okay? Their first instinct is to take off for the hills. Right? They're not going to stay and fight. They don't want to deal with that lion. They're out of there. Okay? Those are the two main types of people inside an organization. Now, there is a very rare, very, very small segment of organizations that don't fit neatly into one of these two columns. Okay, these people are very rare and they bring extreme value to your organization. And that's the wise old owl. Okay? The owls, in their infinite wisdom, look at a problem, look at a situation and say, okay, how do I tell my boss that nobody likes this initiative, yet keep my job? Okay? And most people think those are ors. Well, do I say something to him, okay, and piss him off, or do I keep him happy and not have to deal with it, right? Or do I go to him and let him know that this is a problem, or do I just stay quiet, right? And most people focus on that, and they really they think about the outcome of how could I go about doing that? Should I go about doing that? If it's a problem, you should say something. And the difference is the wise old owl focuses on the and. Focuses on the and. How do I tell my boss that this initiative isn't being received well and still keep my job, right? That's the difference between the wise old owl, the lion, and the gazelle. So what you want to do is focus on how can I become that wise old owl that focuses on the and in any situation. So let's talk a little bit about why it is so difficult to enter into a crucial conversation. Why as humans we have a hard time with that. Okay? You are genetically wired to suck at crucial conversations. Okay? Genetically wired to suck at crucial conversations because for years and years, biologically, we are wired to get into a confrontation and do one of two things. What are they?
Flight or fight.
Yep. Psychology 101, right? And what happens in fight or flight? What happens when you enter that situation? I know there's people in the room that know the answer. What happens chemically within your body? Adrenaline, right? You release adrenaline. Is adrenaline your friend in a crucial conversation? Absolutely not. So all the blood in your body starts to go to the large muscles away from your brain. You release adrenaline, other chemicals start flowing. The end result, without getting into biology here, is you basically go into an argument with the brain power of a monkey. Okay? How many of you have ever finished an argument with your spouse or somebody that's close to you and you get done with it and you're like, oh man, if I just would have said, and then I should have, and then there's no way, I should have, Anybody ever have that feeling before? Yeah. You know why? Because you're all amped up. You can't think clearly in that moment. So understanding that you're genetically wired to stink is a big part of understanding a crucial conversation. So if I've got to give somebody some negative feedback about their performance at work, is that a crucial conversation? Yeah, there's probably going to be opposing viewpoints. The stakes are going to be high, right? If all of a sudden I'm at my kid's Little League baseball game and I'm going through, I'm done at the end, all the parents are coming by and saying, hey, great night, doing those kind of stuff. People are walking by and all of a sudden angry dad stops and says, how come my kid didn't get to pitch? That a crucial conversation? Yeah, it can be, right? All those things that happen every day. If you go and you're sitting down with your kid and you're saying, hey, you're really doing a crappy job at school, right? Your grades are down, you're slipping this way, you're doing that. You go and you sit down with your kid. Potentially a crucial conversation in terms of how you handle that. So just understanding that we as humans are genetically wired to not be very good at it is a big part of what can help. So I want to spend a little bit of time on this, okay? Most of us think that something happens in our life and we react to it, okay? There's a stimulus and a response. That's far from the truth of how things work. So this is the path to action. I see and hear something. I tell a story about it in my head. It makes me feel a certain way, and then I act. Okay? Think about it for just a second. Have you ever had somebody that's shown up late to work and you start to tell the backstory for why they did it? You have somebody that has a bad attitude and you start to fill in your own backstory for why they have a bad attitude? So let's take an example of this that can play out in how this works. So let's say I'm driving up, I live in Ames, I'm coming down to work, I'm driving down I-35, and I can see a car, it's about to merge to my right, and I'm driving, and I speed up a little bit, okay? Punch the gas just a hair. They punch the gas too. I punch it again, they punch the gas too. I punch it again, they're punching again, and we're coming onto the on-ramp. I've got a car in the left-hand lane, and I can't get over, and I'm squeezing in between, and I look over, and I see, oh, here's this rich asshole in a BMW. He's got a tie on, he's got his BMW, and he cuts me off, flies by. He says, in the meantime, he takes the time to tell me, I'm number one, right? And goes and hits the lane and takes off, and I see on his back sticker, he's got Go Cubs Go. And I grew up a Cardinal fan, and I'm like, oh, great, it's one of those Cub fans. Nobody can live with them since they won the series. You know, so I've told this whole story in my mind. Yeah, he thinks he owns the road because he's got this nice car and all this, right? So I do all this in my mind, and clearly the only rational thing to do in that situation is to speed up and get his license plate number so that I can call the highway patrol, right? Call 911 and report him for speeding and reckless driving. And so I floor it, and I'm going to catch him, and I pop over the next hill, and I get pulled over, right? So then I go to the highway patrolman, and oh gosh, well, it wasn't really my fault, and he doesn't care, and he gives me a ticket, okay? So now I get into work, and I've told all this story in my head. Well, this guy sped up because he owns the road, and he thinks this and that, and he drives this kind of car, and all these things, and he's a Cubs fan, and all this stuff, and clearly my response was justified by doing that, right? So I've told this whole backstory in my head, and when we do that, we tell this backstory, they fall into three main categories, okay? And those are victim, villain, and helpless. So I get to work and I tell my coworkers. So I'm driving down the interstate, minding my own business, when this guy starts to merge out of nowhere, comes in, cuts me off, flips me off, drives there. I was just minding my own business, right? I've decided to floor it, go catch up with him. I pop over the hill, and there's a highway patrol, okay? I was driving down the road minding my own business. I'm a victim, right? When this asshole driving a BMW, I've made him a villain in my mind, right? And clearly, there was nothing I could do about it. I mean, I did the only smart thing I could to speed up to report him to the highway patrol, and I got caught, and I got a ticket out of it. Can you believe that? There was clearly nothing I could do about it. Okay? So I've made up this entire story in my head to justify my actions. And I use that example because it illustrates quickly all 3 points, but how many times do we do that with our team members, with our spouses, with our people that are close to us? We fill in the blanks and we tell this backstory in our mind about why they've done something that may or may not be true. In most cases, it's not. It's actually, the more intelligent you are, the better you are at telling these stories. So I'm going to get down to some real specific things that you can do here, and you're going to walk out of here, and Mandy will pass out some cards with you with a cheat sheet. Okay? So when we do this with our teams, we spend a lot of time getting down into the psychology of it. We spend more time on what this sounds like. But I want you to leave here today with a cheat sheet that you can put in place to put this into practice the next time you have a difficult conversation that you're facing. Okay? And here's the way that this cheat sheet works. So the first thing that you want to do, and Dave talked about this, right? you want to, especially if you know you're hot-tempered and you have a chance to run at things, you're more of a lion, you want to give yourself a chance to back up a little bit. And as you do this over time, you might not need to actually sit down and write about it. You can start to do it on the fly. But just take a few notes and fill this out. So the first thing you do is you concentrate on, here's what I don't want to have happen. Okay? Here's what I don't want to have happen. And you kind of fill in the blanks there. Here's what I want. Here's what I do want to have happen. So now you take the focus away and start to think about, okay, here's what I don't want to have happen with this relationship. Here's the end result that I'm looking for. Here are my facts. And I'm going to fill out the facts. Now, if you really want to do damage to a relationship, insert your opinion in this column. Okay? Just come with, and the facts are that you have screwed this up again and you are such a dumbass that I'm going to have to bail you out. Okay? That's a really good way to damage a relationship, is to insert your opinion in for the facts. Now, you put your opinion in there. Here's the facts of what happened. Here's my opinion. And then you're going to ask what you're missing. You're going to ask them to insert their facts and opinions into the conversation. Great way to get started. Okay? Doesn't mean that everything's going to go perfectly from there in that conversation, because in any crucial conversation or in anything, you can only control what? Yourself, right? But it gives you a much better chance to get started. So let's say that you have somebody who's been showing up late for work. Okay? This person does great work when they're out in the field. They perform at a very high level, but they continue to have problems showing up late for work. Okay? So you sit down with them and you say, hey, I don't want you to think that I don't appreciate the fantastic work that you do, because when you're out in the field, you're rocking it. You're doing a fantastic job. But I do want to make sure that we're on the same page about what the expectations are for working here. The facts are, your department is coming in and performing at this level, and your labor rates are fantastic. They're some of the best in the company. They're X, right? But in my opinion, it's keeping you from being able to advance and take that next step. You've told me that you want to advance. You've told me that you want to be an operations manager someday. But in my opinion, you're losing the respect of your team because of the fact that you're showing up late. Now, is there something that I'm missing? Is there something that I don't know? Do I have this wrong? Because in the fact line, you've showed up late 3 times in the last 3 months. And now we need to sit down and talk about this, right? But what am I missing? Is there something I don't know? And that last part is really key. It's a genuine curiosity. Maybe I've got something wrong here. Maybe there's something I don't know. Maybe there's more to the story that you can make me aware of. Not, how can you be such a dumb shit? Okay? That's not a genuine question to fill in at that point. Does that make sense? Anybody have an example of a crucial conversation that they want to turn into a script? This probably isn't a good idea, but I'll try it on the fly. Got a situation you're facing that an example.
Here you go, Brian.
Okay, thanks, Orv.
Kind of that whole thing. Hey, you've been with the company for just 3 short weeks. You do great work. We knew you did great work before you came in. You're doing great work now, but you're showing up late. First 3 weeks, you've been late 3 times, not 3 months, 3 weeks. Okay? Now, what am I missing? What comes back to me is, the company doesn't do this for me, doesn't do this for me. Why don't you show me a little bit of grace? Because I'm coming in late, but I'm doing this over and above what I should be doing. So it's your problem, it's not my problem.
Okay.
Fill in the blank.
Yeah, so great question, right? And this doesn't guarantee that it's going to go well. right? It just gives it a chance to get off to a better start, right? But then continue to ask questions. Continue to ask, what did Dave talk about this morning, right? So let me make sure that I'm understanding you correctly. You think that there's a certain amount of productivity in the job that you do that allows X amount of showing up late, and that you somehow earn those, right? So another great question would be, okay, yep, I can understand how you might think that way, even though as warped as you may feel that is. I can understand how you might think that way. So tell me, how would we set that up? How could we put that into a policy within our things here at work? What would that look like? How could we? So let's see. What would we keep track of that allowed that, and then how many misses would that give somebody, and do that, and just keep asking questions. Not in this book, but a separate thing calls it Sherlocking. Keep asking questions enough to the point that you keep moving the dots closer and closer for them to realize just how stupid they are. Other scenarios there. Yes, sir.
What about an employee to a boss that wants to have a crucial conversation?
Oh, they don't work that way. Just kidding. Yeah, so here's a great way. So can you give me an example of maybe what it is? I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if your boss is in the room, but can you give me an example? Even more specific?
Well, I work at Habitat, so we just went through a crucial conversation.
Okay.
We're just trying to figure out ways how we can have crucial conversations in smaller segments before they get to a point of a boiling point. So for us as employees, it's harder, I think, to figure out how to have a crucial conversation with your boss.
Absolutely, right? Much more difficult to lead up, not impossible, right? But going into that, having that crucial conversation with your boss, sit down and saying, hey, here's what I don't want to happen here. I want you to listen to me all the way through this. I really value being a team member here. It's extremely important to me. And what I do want to do is be that type of team member who's willing to communicate and put myself out there. And I know that you're the type of person that values that feedback. And I know that you want that type of feedback. So can I ask your permission to share something that I think will make us better as a team? Okay. Now there's a key one right there. Asking permission to that person, right? What is your boss going to say? No, I'm not interested in that feedback that's going to make us better as a team, right? If that's the answer, you got a whole new set of problems, right? But hopefully they can take that, right? The facts are we're not doing very well at X. The facts are our sales numbers are down, right? It has to be something that is indeed a fact, something that can be measured, right? Insert your fact there. In my opinion, it could be from this, or you might be causing that if it's a difficult situation, right? In my opinion, we'd be better if you could do a better job of this. But I don't know what it's like to be the leader, and I don't know what it's like to do your job, and I know there's things that are way more complicated than I understand, so I'm probably missing something here. Would you mind filling me in? Okay. Now, if your boss is an asshole, your boss is an asshole. I mean, even in doing that, you may not be able to help, but does it give a better chance to have that conversation that way than if you walk into your boss's office and say, hey, you are really missing the boat here. You are screwing this thing up. If you don't fix this, we're going to have big problems. Whoa, okay. Where did that come from, right? So the way that you deliver it and the way that you set it up greatly increases your chance for success. Other questions? Mandy's got some crucial conversation cards. We had these printed up, gave them to our guys. Mandy, if you want to go ahead and start passing those out. We had these printed up for our guys, and we've done a lot of this training. We've actually done role plays. So we went and put this training on the extended version of it, and then asked our guys in the field to come up, and we say, okay, what's the situation? Well, he's on his phone all the time, or we caught him doing this or that or the other. How do I deal with it? And we give them a situation, and then we ask them to role play that out. And as uncomfortable as that can be, it's really valuable to give guys get a chance to do that, go through that, and then get some feedback on how they handle that. I get a real kick out of, and probably the thing that I get the most excited about, we have a guy that works at our Waterloo branch. He looks like he's straight off the Duck Dynasty set, and he can be a little rough around the edges at times, and he's been through this training now 3 different times. And he talks about having his card that he carries with him, and he'll actually, and I come in, he'll pull it out of his wallet and go, hey, I still got my card, and I'm doing this. And the first time we talked about this, he said, so when I catch them doing this, I shouldn't threaten to, and I can't even, Wendy, I can't even say it, what he was gonna do with the broomstick if one of the guys didn't shape up. And he said, yeah, I no longer tell them that I'm gonna do that with the broomstick now. I found a much better way to communicate, and I think that's a great positive step forward.